Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. A very warm welcome to our webinar on next-gen travel risk management with AI. Just to give you a bit of a brief introduction to us. So Solace Global, we're a global risk management company. We specialise in travel risk, comms and maritime and offshore security. And we recently acquired an independent AI company called Neuralink, and that's designed to enhance control and data privacy. And that's all supported by our 24-hour GSOC. Joining us today, we have Emily Roberts, Managing Director of Solace Global Risk, and she's got 15 years supporting multinationals, governments and NGOs to develop and embed resilient travel risk management systems. So brings a wealth of expertise with her today. And we also have Leon Story, who's the founder of Neuralink and head of AI at Solace Global. He's leading the AI development within our travel risk management software, Solace Secure. My name is Amy Stone. I'm head of marketing at Solace Global, and I'll be guiding you and moderating the webinar today. Today, we'll be looking at the future of travel risk management. We're not going to be looking so much about travel risk management as it stands today. And if you look to the right there, one of the biggest key factors that we're seeing is by 2025, AI models have surpassed humans in nearly all technical benchmarks. So what does that look like for travel risk management? How can we actually apply that in real world scenarios? And what are the opportunities and challenges that come with that? And we'll also cover off some practical next steps and hopefully have a bit of time for Q&A at the end. What is next-gen travel risk management? So we're going to be talking about more than just travel safety. It's about how technology is reshaping the way we understand and manage risk. The current model, it relies on human expertise, which is undoubtedly valuable, but in a crisis, it can be slow, manual and reactive. Just really to highlight, we aren't talking about replacing humans. It's more about augmenting human expertise with AI to work smarter and faster and help anticipate those risks. The aim of today is to show you what's next, what's possible, and what are the challenges and how fast it's all moving. Emily, I think now's a good time if we look at why this is so high on your agenda right now.
Thanks, Amy. I think all of us will probably agree that the risks facing corporate travellers have dramatically evolved. Post-pandemic, we've been dealing with far more complex threat landscape, seen escalating geopolitical tensions, multiple ongoing regional conflicts, political unrest, some major climate-driven environmental events, and now an expanded cyber threat surface, which altogether means an effective travel risk management or TRM solution is more essential than ever. But these tools have always faced an adoption challenge because for many travellers, especially to those lower risk destinations, the perceived value of travel risk management tools has been limited because too often they're met with quite generic advice and alerts that add noise rather than clarity, creating what we would call alert fatigue. And obviously with that comes this sort of disengagement. And I guess whilst the emphasis historically has been that travel risk management in organisations has been about meeting that corporate duty of care requirement, which is absolutely essential, it may fail to create enough visible personal benefit for the individual traveller. And if they don't see that value, then they won't engage. And that lack of adoption could erode the effectiveness of that tool. But actually, this is the exciting bit. This is why we're talking about this today, because this is exactly where AI is going to be able to change that game. For all the travel risk managers who have struggled to get users to adopt the app and are struggling to see enough information that's accurate and timely, fast enough, this is the game changer. We have got that opportunity to reinvent travel risk management. It's moving it from this compliance-driven tool to a trusted, always there, always on travel companion in your pocket that can deliver that journey-specific, highly relevant intelligence that's tailored to the traveller themselves, their itinerary, their profile, their preferences, maybe even behavioural patterns, and reduce that irrelevant noise, deliver truly actionable insights in real time, and adapt instantly as a condition changes on the ground. with the result that we'll end up with a system travellers actually want to use, and a system that those risk professionals, the heads of security and CSOs out there can just absolutely rely on and improve that engagement, improve staff safety, improve organisational resilience. And at Solace, our mission is absolutely to set that benchmark for protecting people on the move. Personally, as the managing director, I see it as my responsibility to ensure that we innovate intelligently, apply emerging technologies like AI with the help of Neuralink and Leon and his team to create solutions that safeguard lives, empower our staff out there operating all over the world, and help organizations just stay ahead of risk.
Ultimately, so much comes down to trust and the human aspect of when you are going abroad and keeping people safe. We asked you, what is the biggest challenge that you'd like AI to solve in your travel risk management program? And interestingly, if you look at some of the key things that are coming up, we're seeing information management. How do we actually make sense of such an abundance of data? How do we actually build trend analysis from that? How do we build early warning systems and real-time updates? We should cover quite a lot of these topics throughout the session. Leon, if we head to you and start looking at how it actually comes about, what's that future actually look like when we're building AI into travel risk management?
By this point, it's more than likely most people have used AI in some capacity across one or more services. AI is no longer theoretical, especially in TRM, already redefining how we assess, interpret, and act on global threats. It's one of the major shifts shaping the future of travel risk. We can use AI to detect patterns, even subtle ones, anticipate or predict where risks are likely to emerge. What can it do? It can score individual trips in real time based on live data, traveler profiles, shifting geopolitical conditions. So imagine every traveler having a dynamic risk score updated in real time based on their profile, their destination, behavior, global alerts, even local sentiment scraped from social media. Using that sentiment analysis and social listening helps spot unrest and disruption before making headlines. And using other sensors such as satellite data can be used to feed live environmental data like weather, wildfires, or crowd density directly into a TRM dashboard. With all this data, AI-powered platforms can quickly analyze and triage emergency situations, dynamically offering relevant response protocols the moment something goes wrong. At Solace, we implement AI under the principle that it doesn't replace decision makers. It should enhance them. It gives risk managers, security leads, and duty of care operators better data, faster insight, and earlier warning. So in short, AI helps us be more proactive and not just reactive. Importantly, this isn't just about replacing humans, it's about letting humans be great at being human. So we focus on using AI to remove repetitive, time-consuming workloads so our people can focus on bringing real value. To do that, we've recently introduced capabilities such as alert pre-generation. So using AI to scan multiple sources, filter out the noise, categorize the content, summarize it into our tone of voice, and present that to our operations team ready for review. From there, our analysts and operations team verify sources, they can add extra context and decide what action to take. And we're very big advocates of a human in the loop model. So keeping speed and efficiency without losing trust or judgment.
I think human is probably the key word there. It's about involving people as humans and not seeing them as just a risk factor, or even just bringing in that expertise when we're making those big decisions. Also, when we're looking at the human side of things, is how do we actually make it personal to them? And hyper-personalization is one topic that seems to be a big focus for us. Leon, can you share a bit more about what you're doing there at the moment?
So when we talk about next-gen travel risk management, especially using AI, the two areas that really want to kind of focus on is hyper-personalization. So we're moving away from the old model of risk information being pushed to travelers at bulk. So often this could be generic or could be perceived as noise to travelers. AI lets us flip that model entirely. So we can create an environment where travelers pull the information they need so they get the right update at the right time and for the right context. Going back to the noise we're talking about, with all the extra data available, personalized, concise, targeted summaries can help drive that engagement and give travelers better coverage. Using AI, we can strip away what's irrelevant. They can really focus on what's affecting them. And when building out a risk profile for a traveler, some of the most important risk signals sit in sensitive categories, things that travelers may not want to openly share, but are crucial to understanding their risk profile individually. So we've taken a privacy first design approach. So with AI, we can process preferences and trip details locally or in controlled environments, meaning we often can't see the personal data ourselves, and we shouldn't need to. The traveler has full control from personal preferences to the purpose of the trip, all of which can fine-tune their risk profile without compromising that trust. Our analysts can prepare intelligence and advice based on these sensitive categories, which can be privately provided to the relevant travelers without data leaving the traveller's device. The future of travel risk management, we see it as highly personal, deeply relevant, and entirely private, and AI is the engine that's making this possible.
Emily, from a board perspective, why does this matter to them and why should they care?
I guess, Amy, you're probably not like me for saying this. I think it's very much the difference between those kind of bulk marketing campaigns that go out that just try and get everybody in. You don't often even click on them, you don't often open them, versus somebody phoning you with something you absolutely need to know about, with the right information for something you really need, personalizing that, giving you what you need and just what you need, so you don't need to pay attention to reams of information, but just this is available, this is what it is, this is what you need to do for you specifically. That's when people will pay attention, and that's when that adoption rate will go up significantly.
You know, when we are looking at building in such in-depth profiles of people, naturally it's going to give us a huge amount of data. So I think this leads us quite well on to the next point, which is looking at deep reasoning. And Leon, why do you think that is such a big factor right now?
Hyper-personalization is about what the traveller sees. Deep reasoning is how the system understands and decides what's important. So we still have to put guardrails and have to direct the AI in certain ways. The fuel in that AI is the data, and that fuel is growing faster than ever. More data doesn't automatically mean better insights. In fact, without structure, it can just create more noise. With deep reasoning, we can use AI and help AI take multiple systems and data points, whether that's first-party operational data, user activity, government records, social media, or even live sensor feeds, and aggregate them into one coherent picture. Where it gets powerful is the more data points we include, the better AI can verify or disregard unreliable sources. So this is where we don't mind the noise. We can benefit from the noise for the AI before it gets to us. Unknown or questionable inputs can be cross-checked against trusted ones. We use knowledge graphs and contextual understanding. So we're not just grouping data by topic, we're grouping it by relevance. So AI is very powerful in looking at what's similar, what similarities am I seeing? How is this related to something I've seen before? So this means if something is important to this traveller on this trip in this context, it gets surfaced. If it's noise, it just gets filtered out. And we also know that in high risk or critical decisions, human in the loop is still vital. And again, it's one of the big points we put forward is human in the loop. The deep reasoning can track not just the conclusion, but how and where all those data points came from. Having those references of where it made its decision helps that human in the loop review. Building trust in the system makes decision making far more transparent, which is also relevant for TRM. And ultimately, deep reasoning turns raw data into structured, contextual, and actionable intelligence, making risk management faster, more accurate, and more trustworthy. And again, going back to the human in the loop, it's so crucial for any high risk or critical process. The ability for deep reasoning to keep track of the how and the where, the data points and where they came from, speeding up that review and trust. And ultimately, everything is a data point and they can be fed from anywhere. So first-party data, social media, sensor data. We use the AI to aggregate all that into a single pane of glass.
That is such a huge factor, is that we're not looking to overload people with even more data than they're already faced with. I think how can we take that intelligently and turn it into things you actually need to know and actually need to use to make a decision. It's all great having this data, but if we can't attribute where it's come from and what we actually need to do with that, then ultimately it might pose an even bigger concern or risk factor. We've looked in the technical side of things. How can we actually put that into a real world context? So Emily, if you want to paint a bit of a picture on how you see this taking place for travellers.
I always find these scenarios help kind of bring it more to life than just the theoretical. And we've been speaking to a few of our clients, some of you on the call today, around this to start to sort of brainstorm how can AI really help you as risk managers have a better understanding of what's going on the ground, keeping your staff informed, making sure you get the right information timely, and it gives you everything you need to make a decision. So when we looked at the typical scenario, we looked at sort of Jane, who's female traveller, first-time traveller as well. So inexperienced to risk environments. She's travelling from America to China. So a lone female traveller going to be working in an area that's been identified as quite high volume of opportunistic crime. So there's that consideration. Plus, she's decided to share just on her app that she has asthma. And as Leon was saying, the ability to use that app and the app take that information. So the company doesn't have to have that awareness of any medical conditions of your staff. But now the system knows she suffers from asthma. And China, they have often quite poor air quality, which is an important factor to be aware of for Jane only, not for someone who doesn't suffer from any kind of respiratory conditions. But for Jane, knowing about the environmental considerations there is key. But imagine then that the AI system could also say, plus we've looked into it, the asthma medication you're bringing into country, you can bring up to 2 of, or you can bring as many as you like, but you have to have your prescription. So it will give her lots of information around that, which I think at the moment when you see these pre-travel briefs, they tend to be quite generic and quite wide reaching. So you have 14, 15 pages to read, where for Jane, with an AI powered TRM platform, even before she boards her flight, this system's building this risk profile for her that's tailored to that itinerary, tailored to those health conditions, tailored to her travel history, that she's a new traveler, and can offer that pre-travel advice in plain language, summaries, highlight safe transit options from the airport, where's good to stay that's a safer area for accommodation. And then during the stay, being able to still keep all that information known and be monitoring live intelligence feeds in multiple languages from local news and from social media, right through to those environmental sensors to identify anything that could impact her personally. That whole duty of care is just much more involved and very relevant to each individual traveller. But then let's say the next stage is when something goes wrong. So in this scenario, sudden flooding hits her location. So what if we could then within seconds start calculating the safest evacuation routes? Because social media is popping up photos everywhere showing us what roads are flooded, which ones are still clear, can see all the traffic data and see where there's bottlenecks. So it can start to give her, knowing her exact GPS location, the best routes, maybe even coordinate a driver straight to her, and again reserve a hotel room outside of that area of danger. Because unless you act quickly with things like that, when there's an incident like this, hotel rooms in areas that are safe are going to book up quickly. If it could just hold that room for her instantly, and it's just up to the traveller or the HR manager or the risk manager to approve, you can just see the kind of speed that you can start to really support in a crisis as well. So right through from better preparation to ensuring everything is done as quickly and as well informed as possible, and all reported back simultaneously to the HR team, the risk managers, to see all those steps. So they've got that peace of mind that everything is happening as quickly and as efficiently and as informed as possible.
When you look at it from a bigger picture, taking it from such a holistic point of view, undoubtedly it's going to have a huge uptick for user adoption, which I think, as we said before, has been notoriously difficult to achieve. Naturally, when you've got so many other factors coming in, when we're dealing with scenarios like this, I guess you could look at it almost like it's a bit of a risk management nirvana if we're going to go to that scale of building out processes that get people to safety. I guess the next question is, what are the pitfalls and what are the precautions we should be looking at when we start building out such mammoth tasks with such big data and making it so personal to people? Leon, is there anything that you want to share about how we actually make it trustworthy and private?
Like any powerful tool, and there's no different to previous challenges with other IT systems over the years. So we need to acknowledge and guard against these. So in fact, in our last webinar, so we'll drop the link in the chat to that, we covered some of the pitfalls in detail. So today I just want to highlight the most important ones and how we approach them. So firstly, privacy concerns. Personalizing travel risk management means collecting more data. So going back to hyper-personalization, that opens up obviously ethical and regulatory questions. So who owns that data? How is it secured? And perhaps most importantly, who gets to decide how it's used? And if not careful, when considering which AI services to use, you could expose personal information into the training pipeline of future models. Then there's over-reliance on automation. So AI is powerful, but it can't replace human judgment in morally complex or rapidly changing crisis. That's why we keep the human in the loop for critical decision making. And we also need to be aware of blind spots in data. So again, an age-old problem of it's only as good as the data they're fed. So the algorithms aren't magically improved. And I think there's a question in the chat just recently of how you can make sure that the answers analyses are consistent, and that's based down to grounding, using knowledge graphs and using data from analysts and using layers of quality control in the output before it gets to the analysts or the travelers. So grounding the AI is very important, and keeping that human in the loop for decision making, but also the deep reasoning can also help there. Keeping the awareness and human oversight remains essential. Another one is tech fatigue. So in risk management, it's tempting to think more alerts equals better safety, but in reality, too many alerts can overwhelm travellers and erode trust. You need to keep it actionable, intelligent, and non-intrusive to keep that noise away. And also, finally, hallucinations. So AI models can occasionally generate inaccurate and misleading insights if not properly grounded. So we mitigate this by grounding all AI outputs in trusted, verified data and applying secondary validation layers before they reach the end user.
Ultimately, it's almost like a co-pilot, which I think we spoke about before. So we don't want to lose that human scrutiny, which ultimately AI doesn't have empathy in the same way that we do when you're making a call in a crisis. So I guess what can we actually do today is probably the next question of what is realistic and how we can build that in to mitigate those risks.
Firstly, audit your current tools and systems. Make sure you know exactly what's in place and what's working and where the gaps are. So if you're using multiple platforms, look at ways of centralizing those, and also understand how your current provider is using the data you prompt with it and where that goes, be that training pipelines. Remove any public facing personal data wherever possible. So follows GDPR and similar regulations, and have a legal obligation to protect personal information. And remember that AI models don't care about names. Person 1 or person 2 is the same as Leon for as much as the AI cares, just as long as it's consistent across prompts. The analysis still works without risking that identity exposure. And for location information, try to zoom out as far as possible. You often don't need an exact address to deliver value, and a general area can be enough while keeping that privacy intact. And also review and rank your sources, so not all data is created equally. So identify which source you trust most and which need human verification before being acted on. And this is going back to the grounding of the information to make sure that the answers are consistent across responses or prompts, and integrate intelligence into your planning. So not just incident response, but into planning. And the risk awareness, AI-driven risk awareness, works best when it informs decision making before problems arise. And finally, partner with tech forward firms and collaborate with your TRM provider. So the goal is to optimize your technology, your processes and your traveler support before the next crisis, not during it. By taking these steps, not just preparing for the future of AI and travel risk management, but making sure that you're more agile, more private and more resilient today.
Just coming to that first question that's come into the chat here, if we're looking at a year or two from now, if we are optimizing all of our tech processes, how are we actually going to measure that impact if the risks are not the same as what they were previously? So, how can we compare if it's apples for apples or not? Is that something that we've thought about or something that we should be considering?
We're definitely looking at ways of, again, on the hyper-personalization, sending back data in terms of what categories, what's those sensitive categories kind of brought higher risk. So has certain attributes of a traveller profile increased in risk, so we can review year on year, for example, number of travellers that have been impacted in certain categories. So we can take this analysis back and review, maybe we need to put more processes in place around certain categories. So we have looked at the analysis of feeding that back in an anonymised way. We have done so far.
We are coming to the end of our session, so we may not get to all of the questions there, but hopefully we've covered off a majority of what we've touched on there. So just to bring today to a close, Emily, can I just have your closing thoughts, just really what people can take away from this today?
Just to reassure everyone, in our industry particularly, we do not see tech as replacing people, just empowering them. In our field, the person at the end of the phone, when someone's in trouble and you just need to speak to somebody and be reassured, get guidance, that is critical and will remain. And the same, I think, for the human in the loop as an analyst. It's essential, because then we can apply cultural and political insight, validate those alerts, as Leon touched on about. AI can be confidently wrong. We need to check that. We do not want to give people false information. So there's always got to be that human part. But AI's role in travel risk management will be to better equip people, risk management companies alike, with smarter tools, sharper intelligence, faster access to what matters most, so they can act with confidence and make informed decisions. But this transformation can only happen if we address its challenges head on, like Leon's touched on, around data privacy, accuracy, tech fatigue, preventing over automation, and preserving essential human oversight. But above all, the mission hasn't changed for us. to protect people wherever they are. What's changing is the way we'll achieve it faster, more intelligently, and with more precision than ever before.
Thank you, Emily. So this comes to the end of the session today. Thank you to everyone that's joined us. Thank you to Emily and thank you to Leon for leading the session today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.